Hello. Rather than ask yourself what you're going to do today, ask yourself, what is life asking of me today? Where am I needed most? Life is full of opportunities. The important ones are the ones you decide to act upon. This is Gregory. The opportunity he chose to pursue is to rebuild the town that once stood here. Last time we gave him a house, but now we need to look beyond our own needs. Some public services would do nicely. My first thought was the fire station, but arson is not in the game. Yet. I tried it. It does not matter how many stoves you put down, it does not burn down the house. We could build a police station. After all, that would do some good for everybody, but then Gregory would have a lot of explaining to do. So we need to think of what else we can build. You know what inspires Gregory today? World War II, specifically post-war Germany. After World War II was over in Europe, Germany was the biggest rubble pile that ever existed. When the Allied forces eventually took over, they had to undertake the task of rebuilding it into a functioning nation once again. Where did they start when rebuilding an entire nation? Interestingly enough, rather than industry or anything else you might expect, it was the postal service. So that's what we're going to give the city today, a post office. The heart of human communication for thousands of years. Not so much anymore, but still useful nonetheless. Today in Bloxburg, we're continuing our goal of building a city, this time working on the main block of buildings. The front facade for today's build is a little larger than I'd like, but it does look nice, so I can't really complain. Originally, I was going to focus on the space in front of the Houghton house. There was going to be a massive church there. It was going to be great to hold a whole thing worked out. The issue I couldn't resolve was that I'm not sure I want to block the Houghton house anymore, so we'll have to think on what to put there. After all, plans should be malleable. The first rule of improv is yes and. We must give ourselves the setup for our next line. If you look on the left, you'll see a bit of a trend in my architectural tastes. This build also will have a turret tower thing, which we'll have to avoid adding to buildings in the future. They're really fun, but too many in a space this small would soil what makes them special. We also need to start considering what our skyline will shape into. Hence my hesitation for putting a church in front of the Houghton house. The biggest thing for today's build will be dimensionality. This game does not cater well to that, and that's a challenge we'll have to overcome. Our main approach for this is to simulate more intricate stonework than the game allows. Part of my attraction to stonework in general is just how intricate you can be when assembling a wall face. It's not as simple as putting up a board, you're selecting each piece as you go along. It's a delicacy, similar to the way we build ourselves throughout our lives. As you assemble yourself throughout your own life, the love and care in selecting which stones to add is integral to how the next layer of stones will fit together. And no wall is permanent, values and tastes change. If you desire change, tear down the wall. Take out those stones. Putting it back together won't be an easy task, but walls organize. They provide stability, protection, or simply a place to hang paintings. Other times, change is out of your control. Sometimes the rocks fall despite your best mortar. It's your choice whether to rebuild it or put your stones into a different wall. Regardless, everything's going pretty well so far in this build, but it's very tedious work if you couldn't tell. I thought I was being smart by using the plank at first to simulate that stone, but it quickly fell out of line and required a bit of fudging around to get right. It's actually a pretty cheap technique if you're committed to the time investment, but towards the end I switched to using cubes to make the stone blocks design, which allowed me to quickly copy-paste the stones and make adjustments from there. I especially like the arches created by the stones over the windows, and I'm surprised the game doesn't already have something similar. I overlapped them a bit because the gray shadow created looks rather nice when viewed from far away. It's kind of our own way to simulate the mortar that would be between the stones, or at the very least to draw a line between two different stones. Similar to the Houghton house, this post office is based on one in the real world, though unlike the Houghton house, it still exists. Currently it is the Ideas Exchange Old Post Office in Cambridge, Ontario. As the name implies, it's been retired from its role as a post office, instead being renovated in the last decade to be a bookless library. And I've never heard of these before, but apparently they're places where you can borrow quite literally anything you need, from digital copies of books and movies to tools and musical instruments. I poked around their site a little bit, and they also host events like a weekly bad sculpture night, a knitting circle, and a ukulele meetup of all things, which I can only imagine what ungodly sounds that room will make. If you couldn't tell, I prefer music made by real instruments, like the banjo. This is an incredibly important character detail for Gregory. Do not forget this. Everything goes back to the banjo. Anyway, the old building has a contemporary addition on it for its new purpose, but we won't worry ourselves with trying to recreate those details. We need a post office, and the original plan of the building will do nicely, especially for the aesthetic we're going for in the town. Though all this does give me an idea. I'll definitely build a hole-in-the-wall library later on down the road. Probably quite literally down the road. After all, having fun isn't hard when you've got a library card. Probably one of my favorite details of this build is the sign. It truly is the small things that make the biggest impact. I also really like the clock tower. It plays rather well with the overall asymmetry of the rest of the building, but we're not done just yet. Would you like to play a game? How many thoughts do you think the average person has a day? Would it surprise you to learn that the estimate is up to 60,000? Would it surprise you to learn that 95% of those are ones you had yesterday? Take the time today to reflect on something new. Expand your mind as Gregory has expanded these blocks. I cannot say that you must only think positively, but you should only mull over your mistakes long enough to understand why they happened. Beyond that, the limited number of thoughts you can have in a day are better spent elsewhere. Mistakes are given to everybody, but lessons are only gifted to those who are keen to learn. Today, Gregory spends his daily thought count wisely. He does not concern himself with his troubling past. He reflects only on the building of the Houghton house and applies what he's learned to the new post office. Gregory may have started out as a terrible person, but he's improving himself in small ways. Self-improvement happens in steps, not leaps. And it works rather well too. I'm extremely happy with how this build has turned out so far. And for the final part of the roof, we're going to cheat a little bit. You see, one of the few goals I carry over to every build is to break the game a little bit. I don't mean that in a literal sense, like strangling the game's code, rather in a sense that makes a person wonder how we were able to do something. Possibly the best example of this on this particular build are the roof elements, but there are a bunch of smaller examples throughout. I really love the pursuit of techniques and features that are outside the normal template that the game offers or expects, and I truly hope you explore that in your own builds. Even outside of building, in all your exploits, you should strive to feature things that you personally value the most. I'm not saying to redefine the genre, only to embrace what makes you unique. As always, I very much appreciate you joining us in Gregory's journey. Because of your support, you'll continue to see this through to the very end. Next time, we'll probably continue working on the main block. We'll likely be able to finish multiple smaller buildings rather than just one larger building, but don't quote me on that just yet. I have some ideas, but I will have to plant them and wait for them to grow. Rather, I'll leave you with another thought that means a lot to me. Everything I make will serve a purpose, only I may not know in the present how exactly it will serve me or others in the future. Whether it succeeded or failed, whether I was happy with it or not, or even whether it was initially useless or not, all this stuff culminated to become part of my voice. Creative expression allows you to rehearse that voice, to improve it and share it with others. For no one else can practice that voice for you, you must be willing to speak. Let us hear you.